So here we are. We are sliding into the darkest time of the year, at least for those of us who live in the Northern Hemisphere. In just a few days, it will be the solstice, the beginning of winter. And it's the time when the sun is lowest in the sky. We have long nights and short days. So for those of you who might live in the Southern Hemisphere or actually near the equator, it's a different environment. And so I'm going to have to ask you to hang in with me. And if you can, imagine in your mind's eye winter, because that's a bit of what I'm going to speak to, what's inspired me today. You know, as much as I used to resist the cold and the darkness, I'm trying literally to let my shoulders relax and turn towards what winter has to teach me instead of bracing against it. And much of what I'm finding is about letting go. It's so obvious. And that's really one of the things I love about nature as teacher. The earth has let go of a lot. All of the leaves have fallen. Much of the vegetation has died back, and with it, a lot of the color in our gardens and the landscape has disappeared. Many of the birds have migrated south since they have no food sources. Insects have died. It's quiet outside. When I walk now, there's no understory of bushes and no leaves. So I can see into the woods. I can see through the trees for a distance and notice what I call the bones of the landscape. I can see the shape of the hills. And there's a sense of clarity in that. It's an invitation. This letting go I see in nature is an invitation to me to also let go. To let go of things I've accumulated, of wanting pleasurable experiences, of maybe wishing that things were different. And so as I let go, I can see more clearly into my life. I can see again the structure, so to speak, the things that are important to me underneath all of the wanting that I can be distracted by. I can feel it. I can feel how winter is speaking to me to simplify. And I wonder if you take a moment and just notice if you might also feel that sense of winter inside. So that's really what I want to talk about today. It's about renunciation. And that word is really something we probably generally associate with the austere lives of monks and nuns who have, by choice, let go of most worldly possessions and live a really simple life. But, you know, I wonder how renunciation might be helpful to us too. The Metta Sutta seems to point us this way. It says, this is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways. In reality, we touch into renunciation every time we sit down to meditate. For those minutes on the cushion, we're minimizing all of our distractions, right? We close our eyes, we still our bodies and minds. And in the letting go of that external sensory stimulation, we can see more clearly what's going on inside our inner landscape. And each time that we bring our minds back from their wanderings, we're letting go of the stream of thoughts. and our hearts and our minds can quiet a bit and open a little bit more. The question I wonder about for myself is, how does renunciation relate to the rest of my life? Do I really want to think about letting go of things, especially pleasurable ones? It sounds like deprivation to me. It sounds like I'm being asked to give up the things I enjoy and cherish. And there is a part of me that doesn't want to do that. Certainly not as fully as a monk or a nun. But renunciation isn't about deprivation. You know, we can remember the Buddha's story. He was an ascetic for a number of years, and he learned that was not the way to freedom. And he also learned, of course, gluttony, being lost in worldly pleasures, also wasn't the path. Joseph Goldstein offers a really nice reframing of what renunciation is. Instead of thinking of it as deprivation, things that you deny yourself and can't have, perhaps think of it as non-addiction. He describes our desires like an addiction because they're insatiable and because they blind us as we pursue them. We seem to always want more. We're at different levels driven to accumulate things, to pursue pleasurable experiences. And absolutely, there might be some pleasure in the moment. This desire, it can become painful. It's incessant. And this wanting, we can feel it, it's constricting. And I find it really exhausting. And renunciation offers us some freedom from this. It's not so much about moving away from desires by saying no and depriving ourselves, but about moving towards something, finding more freedom when we let go. Practicing renunciation lets us see more clearly the habits of mind that keep us kind of trapped. It shows us the edges of what we're willing to let go of. How much freedom do we want? And how much do our minds rule us? I was recently at a retreat with a monk, Ajahn Jayanto, who's from a monastery locally here in New Hampshire. And as a monk, he's made a vow to live simply and to let go of many worldly pursuits and possessions. So on the retreat, someone asked him a question about why monks only eat 2 meals a day, why they have their last meal at 11 in the morning. And he laughed, which I loved, because I think that even that chuckle communicated a certain kind of understanding. And he said, when we're restraining from eating, it's so easy to see the mischievousness, I can't say it very well, mischievousness of the mind. He went on to talk about how the mind will keep returning again and again to wanting, to feeling the hunger and wanting food. And then it'll start fantasizing, right? About the kind of food that might be most pleasurable. It might start beginning to imagine the next day's meal. And all of this feeding the desire for the pleasure of food. So for him, renouncing an evening meal was an opportunity to really get to know his mind in a deeper and clearer way. That voice in his head was amplified, and he could see the habits and games it played. And he could be curious. And I think importantly, he ended by saying that by not feeding, the desires, his mind quiets slowly over time. What a relief. The Sutta Nipata says, lose the greed for pleasure. See how letting go of the world is peacefulness. And that's what Ajahn Jayanta was describing. Renunciation is often spoken of as a movement towards simplicity, a life that's focused kind of more on the essentials and less on the trappings. It's a life that asks us, what is enough? And I know I can feel the attraction of that kind of simplicity. So this weekend, in kind of perfect synchronicity for this talk, we had a really big snowstorm. We had 18 inches of heavy snow and we lost power. I'm still without power, 3 days now. And thanks to my husband, we are really prepared. We have a wood stove, water, a camp stove. So, our basic needs are met. But we don't have internet, TV, lights, phone, hot water. So this wasn't necessarily renunciation by choice, but we did let go of these luxuries. And our weekend was simple. And we had enough. We were just fine. With what I found is that we had many fewer distractions, and there was such a sense of contentedness. So really, what a great learning this storm offered. In the letting go and moving towards simplicity, it helps us to see through this kind of addictive, grasping nature of desire and see the deeper sense of happiness inside us. It's a happiness or a contentedness that's not dependent on accumulation of things. And actually, it's a happiness that's available in each one of us. It doesn't mean that we have to abandon all that supports us. That doesn't make sense. Like the comfort and safety of our homes, right? Of course, I'm going to be really happy when the power returns and I'll be able to enjoy a hot shower. But the thing is, we can learn to relate to these things differently, not depend on them in a way that dictates our happiness. So I'm very aware that I haven't spoken directly of equanimity today. And I do know that that is the topic that we're speaking of for these months. But I wonder if you can feel the sense of equanimity in this exploration of renunciation. The balance and spaciousness that comes from not chasing our desires. The ability to see our desires arise, like Ajahn Jayanta, and be curious, but not reactive. And actually, his response was a lightness, right? He laughed. And I think that comes with a deep understanding of equanimity. So I'd like to end right back where I began. I really like this metaphor of winter and how it lets go. It's a reminder for me. I hope that you can see it and feel it at some level too. Even in this fallow season, the earth has something to offer us. We see it letting go, like the bare trees that have lost all of their leaves. And we see the sparseness and clarity that this affords us to see a bit more deeply. And we can also see the beauty that's still there. It's like the sun sparkling on the snow. The earth shows us so clearly what I've been trying to put into words. And it really feels like a teaching about renunciation. So I thank you so much for your attention